We're in the middle of chapter 6 here, and it seems to me that it's perhaps veers more towards the traditional yogic attitudes rather than first-hand accounts of self-inquiry. So let's see how we get on. Vasishta continued, "Correct understanding of the body and the intelligence that dwells in the body enables one to understand the entire creation in its material and its spiritual aspects, as easily as one sees objects illumined by a lamp." So here the focus is very much on the body, as it has been recently. And this focus tends to be the emphasis of traditional yoga. If we've touched our own awareness with our own awareness, then things do come into perspective. And the correct understanding of the body and the intelligence, of the body and the mind even, reveals these things, the body and the mind, to be no more than notional, no more than stories, with no intrinsic reality to them. It is only when there is not this right understanding that deluded and wrong notions rise and flourish within one's heart, notions which are utterly devoid of substance. Befuddled by these wrong notions which arise in the absence of the light of true knowledge, one is constantly and restlessly carried hither and thither like a blade of grass in the wind, which is what our attention is normally like. In the absence of the taste, direct knowledge, of the cosmic intelligence, the senses endeavour to apprehend their objects and vainly imagine that such contact gives rise to meaningful experience. This is the craving for understanding, the craving for stories which help us to make sense of the world. In the past, these stories used to be mythological. Nowadays, they're scientific. Both have got their uses. I also mentioned last time stories of the psyche, like Sigmund Freud gave us, or Carl Jung. They can also have stories. These can also provide us with stories which have their uses. So we live in a world of stories. Everything is stories, whether it's scientific, religious, mythological, psychological, sociological, economical, ecological. All stories which have various purposes, which they realise with greater or lesser success. So what we need to do is realise that they are all stories and stop believing in their reality. Surely the infinite and inexhaustible intelligence, consciousness, dwells in all these. However, on account of the absence of self-knowledge, it appears to be ignorant of itself and therefore limited and finite. The life force and its retinue function here merely to provide energy for the movements inherent in living, not with any other motive. In the absence of self-knowledge, all the talking and roaring which people indulge in are like the sound produced by a gun. They inevitably proceed towards destruction and do not lead to salutary results. Fools enjoy the fruits of their labour, not knowing that they are resting and sleeping on a rock that is burning hot. Keeping company with such fools is like sitting in a forest on a tree which is about to be felled. Whatever you do for the sake of such people is like beating the air with a rod. What is given to them is thrown into mud, and to converse with them is as meaningful as the dog barking at the sky. Well, how elitist is this? Is this the attitude we take? That we're going around giving them our wisdom and they're not appreciating it? You need to be very, very careful about attitudes like this. We're not going around trying to teach people. We're going around appreciating people. Everybody's got something to offer. Everybody is a reflection of your own psyche. and so they're giving you information about your psyche, about who you are. So whether you're interacting with the world, whether you're interacting with people, there's something going on which is telling you about yourself, and you dismiss such lessons at your peril. So we're not going around trying to teach people wisdom, not trying to impart wisdom. The imparting of wisdom is always a two-way process. And what we don't do is judge others. We might need to do so from pragmatic points of view. You know, if you've got children and you come into contact with somebody who seems a little bit unsavoury, then you make a judgment then, and you make sure your children are not going to fall prey to somebody unpleasant. From a spiritual point of view, we don't judge anybody. We don't judge anybody as ignorant or whatever. We get on what we have to do. We get on with what we have to get on with. We're not going around with the assumption that we are spiritual authorities. That's just not on. Ignorance of the self is the source of all troubles and calamities. Tell me, O Ram, is there a single trouble that does not spring from ignorance of the self? This entire creation is pervaded by ignorance which sustains it. One who is ignorant is visited again and again by terrible sorrow and rarely by pleasure. Sources of sorrow like body, wealth and wife do not cease in the case of one who is ignorant of the self. And I suppose if you're female, you could say sources of sorrow like body, wealth and husband do not cease in the case of one who is ignorant of the self. For there is no end to the ignorance of one who firmly believes that the body is the self. How can true self-knowledge arise in him? As long as such ignorance rules, the fool falls again and again. His sorrow is unceasing. Even the cool rays of the moon are experienced as poisonous fumes by him. The portals of hell are wide open, eager to receive such a fool. So really, I think this section here is about the body, our identification with the body, and I suppose also identification with the bodies of others, like our partner or spouse. The message here seems to be to look beyond the body.